Abby Clay, and I teach in the forest at Karner Blue. And I work with students that are primarily nonverbal with either the ASD or DCD label. Joint attention is a huge skill for kids with autism that they're constantly working on. And then when they don't have the communication skills to really interact and be involved, it's easier for them to not stay fully engaged and to kind of become part of their own world again. So I wanted to see if by increasing the technology with the literacy, if I could increase the engagement with my students, because engagement is one of the hardest things, I think, to really have within this type of setting. So during our core vocab lessons, we had different interactive smartboard activities for each lesson. We had, this wasn't technology, but it was another larger board for their core vocabulary to keep that engagement going. And then we had devices for each one, either an AAC device or an iPad with the GoTalk set up with their core vocabulary, and also a couple of devices that had the smartboard app that could bring the smartboard right in front of them. GoTalk is an AAC app for the iPad. So you can program different pages, and then it has buttons on it that the students can select, and then it has that voice output. It brings it to the students. It's more interactive by having the smartboard and iPads. It's kind of bringing that joint attention, which is also a struggle for my classroom. So it's kind of trying to increase all of those pieces to really make it meaningful for them. It kept them engaged because they had interactive things part of the lesson instead of just us talking. Mm-hmm. And then it also allowed them to communicate and to hear a voice instead of just having visuals in front of them with that device. Then they were able to have that voice output, which I think really made a huge difference for them. So one of the biggest differences I found in one of my students that we had been trialing an AAC device with, and when doing the core vocab assessment, using just a visual board, he wasn't able to find any of the different core vocab words. Using his device, he was able to find 15 out of 16 with a visual to show him, and then on his voice. And I think that huge difference was that he was hearing the voice output. For one of my students who still needed a breakout space for safety purposes, the iPad was able to go into the breakout space with him, so he was still part of the lesson even though he wasn't within the actual classroom. From the initial informal assessment that we did, he was finding about 3 out of the 16 words, and in the end he was finding 10 out of the 16 words. Wow. So it was a huge increase. I was shocked at the amount of communication that I found by having those different pieces of technology available to them. That was amazing to me. And so I learned that, we always know that communication is a huge component to our students, but by allowing them to have that constant access made such a huge difference. Yeah. The knowledge that they have, they weren't able to express before, and now they're able to express it, and it's amazing the difference I've seen in the abilities that they have that unfortunately we weren't able to see in the beginning. And also just having that access to some sort of communication has increased not only their engagement but their learning and their scores on their assessments. There's been a couple of questions that have kind of been in the back of my brain. Some of it is, do they really can they really generalize this to their world in all areas? And because it was so heavily focused during that core vocab instruction, we've been working on trying to generalize it throughout the day. But really seeing if it is something that they can generalize always. And then my other one is just how do we find the time to do that for all areas? Because if I'm seeing this kind of amazing data within the core vocab time, how do I find time to then do that in all areas? Because I think that we would see their learning increase so much that it would be super exciting, but it's so hard and time consuming that how do we do that? I think I would continue trying to increase like the technology and the interactive pieces throughout all of the academic areas, and then also really working on using that core vocab all day long. So not just really focusing on it during that core vocab time, but focusing on it all day so I can find out if they really are generalizing it to all areas.